The beggar by the market. Zina, a vibrant and compassionate young woman, walked along the bustling dirt road leading to the market. The morning sun cast a warm golden glow over the small village, illuminating the colorful stalls and the laughter of children playing nearby. Zina carried a woven basket, ready to buy fresh vegetables and herbs for her family. As she neared the market square, her attention was drawn to an elderly woman sitting under the shade of a baobab tree. The woman's clothes were tattered, her face lined with the marks of hardship. Beside her sat two frail children, their eyes hollow with hunger. They clutched plastic bowls, pleading for spare coins or food from passers-by. Zina's heart ached at the sight. She knelt before the old woman and gently asked, "Mama, have you eaten today?" The woman shook her head. "No, my daughter. We've been here since dawn, hoping for the kindness of strangers." Without hesitation, Zina reached into her basket and handed the woman a loaf of bread and some dried fish. She also took out a few coins and pressed them into the woman's hand. "Please take this. It's not much, but it will help for today." The old woman's face lit up with gratitude. "Bless you, my child. May the ancestors guide your path." As Zina stood up to leave, her gaze caught a man standing a short distance away. He was tall and dressed in an elegant suit, the kind rarely seen in the village. His polished shoes glimmered in the sunlight, and his expression was somber. There was an odd intensity in his eyes as he stared at the old woman and her grandchildren. Curiosity tugged at Zina. She approached the man cautiously. "Excuse me, sir, do you know that woman?" To her shock, the man looked directly at her and whispered, "You can see me." Zina froze. Something about his presence felt unnatural. The air around him seemed colder, heavier. "Yes, I can see you. Why wouldn't I?" The man's expression shifted to one of sorrow. "Because I am not alive." Zina's breath caught in her throat. She instinctively took a step back, but the man held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Please, don't be afraid. My name is Kofi. That woman is my mother, and those children are my siblings. They have been suffering since I died years ago." Though Zina was skeptical, the sincerity in his voice made her pause. "What happened to you?" she asked. Kofi's gaze dropped to the ground. "I was the breadwinner of my family. After I passed in a tragic accident, my mother had no one to support her. They lost our home and everything we owned. They have been living in poverty ever since." Zina's eyes softened with pity. "But why are you telling me this? What can I do to help?" Kofi stepped closer, his voice filled with urgency. "Before I died, I hid important documents under the bed in our old home. They contain details of my bank accounts, enough to lift my family out of poverty. My mother doesn't know about them, and even if she did, she wouldn't know how to access them. You're the only one who can help her." Zina hesitated, her mind racing with questions. "Why me?" Kofi gave a faint smile. "Because you have a kind heart, and you can see me. That means the ancestors have chosen you for this task. Please, help my family." Zina took a deep breath, grappling with the weight of his request. Finally, she nodded. "I'll do what I can, Kofi. Your family deserves a chance at a better life." Relief washed over Kofi's face. "Thank you, Zina. You are their last hope." With determination in her heart, Zina turned back toward the old woman and her grandchildren, ready to change their lives forever, the search for the lost treasure. The next morning, Zina set out for the small hut where Mama Ya and her grandchildren lived. The structure was barely standing, with its mud walls cracked and the roof patched with dried palm leaves. Zina knocked gently on the wooden door, her resolve firm despite the daunting task ahead. Mama Ya opened the door, her frail figure wrapped in a faded cloth. Her eyes widened in recognition. "It's you, my child." What brings you here? Zina smiled warmly. Mama, yeah, I need to speak with you. May I come in? The old woman nodded and stepped aside, ushering her into the single-room home. The children sat quietly in a corner, playing with small stones. After sitting down on a wobbly stool, Zina took a deep breath. Mama, yeah, I need to tell you something that might be difficult to believe, but it's important. Mama Ya's brow furrowed. What is it, child? Zina hesitated, then decided to speak plainly. Yesterday, I met someone. His name is Kofi, your son. The old woman gasped, clutching her chest. My son. That's impossible. Kofi has been gone for years. I know, Mama Ya. He's no longer alive, but his spirit spoke to me. He told me about something very important, something that can change your lives. Mama Ya looked skeptical but intrigued. What did he say? Zina leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. Kofi said there are documents hidden under the bed in this house. They hold the key to recovering his savings from the bank. He wanted you to find them so you can have a better life. Tears welled up in Mama Ya's eyes. My Kofi, he always works so hard to take care of us. But how do I know this is true? How do I know you're not making this up? Zina smiled reassuringly. He told me things only you and he would know. Like how he used to call you, no, and how you always saved the largest piece of fish for him at dinner, even when food was scarce. Mama Ya's hand flew to her mouth, a sob escaping her lips. Only Kofi would know that. Encouraged by the old woman's reaction, Zina stood. Let's check under the bed, Mama Ya. If we find the documents, you'll know everything I've said is true. Together, they moved the rickety bed, revealing a dusty floor. Zina knelt and began brushing away the dirt. After a few moments, her fingers hit something solid. She pulled out a small, weathered wooden box. Mama Ya's hands trembled as Zina opened the box. Inside were several papers wrapped in a faded cloth. Zina carefully unfolded them, revealing official-looking bank documents. Mama Ya's eyes widened. This is real. These are Kofi's. Zina examined the papers closely. It's more than real, Mama Ya. These documents show that Kofi had a significant amount of money saved. This could change everything for you and the children. The old woman's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. But how will I claim this money? People like me aren't taken seriously. I've been turned away so many times just because of how I look. Zina placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You won't face this alone, Mama Ya. I'll go with you to the bank. We'll make sure they listen, and we'll get what rightfully belongs to you. The old woman nodded, a glimmer of hope returning to her eyes. Thank you, my child. May the ancestors bless you. As Zina held the documents close, she silently vowed to fight for Mama Ya and her family, no matter the obstacles they might face, the bank manager's deception. The next morning, Zina and Mama Ya made their way to the bustling town bank. Mama Ya clutched the documents tightly, her hands trembling as they approached the grand building with its polished glass doors and imposing pillars. Zina offered a reassuring smile, sensing the older woman's unease. As they entered the bank, the crisp, air-conditioned interior felt like another world. People in fine clothes moved confidently between the counters, while security guards stood at attention near the entrance. Mama Ya hesitated, her worn sandals and patched dress standing in stark contrast to the pristine environment. Before she could speak, one of the guards stepped forward, his expression stern. "Excuse me, madam," he said, blocking their path. "This is not a charity. If you're here to beg, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Mama Ya's face reddened with embarrassment, and she took a step back. Zina, however, stepped forward, her voice firm. "We are not here to beg. "We are here on important business, and we need to see the bank manager immediately." The guard looked Zina up and down, unimpressed. "The manager doesn't have time for uninvited guests. Please leave before I call someone to escort you out." Zina's temper flared, but she took a deep breath. She pulled out the documents and held them up. "These are official bank papers. We have every right to be here, and if you continue to obstruct us, I'll make sure your boss hears about it." The guard hesitated, clearly caught off guard by Zina's confidence. Finally, he muttered, "Wait here," before disappearing into the manager's office. After a tense few minutes, the guard returned and reluctantly gestured for them to follow. Zina and Momaya were led to a luxurious office with a large wooden desk and leather chairs. Behind the desk sat Mr. Okai, a middle-aged man with a polished smile and a gold watch that gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the windows. "Good morning," Mr. Okai said, his voice smooth as honey. "What can I do for you?" Momaya stepped forward nervously, holding out the documents. "This belonged to my son, Kofi. He passed away, but he left this money for our family. We've come to claim it." Mr. Okai took the papers and scanned them quickly. His expression remained calm, but a flicker of greed crossed his eyes. "I see," he said slowly, leaning back in his chair. "I'll need a moment to verify this." He tapped a few keys on his computer, then looked up with an exaggerated sigh. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The account associated with these documents is empty. Your son must have withdrawn the funds before he passed." Momaya's face fell, her hands clutching the edge of the desk for support. "But that can't be. My son would never leave us with nothing." "I'm sorry, madam," Mr. Okai said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "There's nothing more I can do." Zina narrowed her eyes, sensing something was off. She glanced at Momaya, whose shoulders were slumped with defeat. Just as Zina opened her mouth to protest, she felt a chill in the room. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Kofi's ghost standing in the corner, his face etched with frustration and urgency. "He's lying." Kofi's voice echoed in her ears. "The money is there. He transferred it to his personal account. You must stop him." Zina's heart pounded, and she clenched her fist. Turning back to Mr. Okai, she said sharply, "I'd like to see proof of that claim. Show us the account history." Mr. Okai's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "I assure you, there's no need for that. I've already checked." "Then you won't mind if we look," Zina interrupted, her voice steady. "It's a simple request. Unless you have something to hide." The room grew tense as Mr. Okai stared at her, his mask of politeness slipping. "I'm sorry, but only authorized individuals can access that information." Zina met his gaze, unflinching. "Then we'll involve the authorities. If you're telling the truth, you have nothing to fear." Mr. Okai's lips tightened, but he waved a hand dismissively. "Fine. Do as you wish." Zina helped Momaya to her feet and led her out of the office, whispering, "We'll get to the bottom of this. Don't lose hope." As they left, Kofi's ghost followed close behind, his determination matching Zina's. She silently vowed to expose Mr. Okai's deception and recover the fortune that rightfully belonged to Momaya and her family. Exposing the corruption. The humiliation at the bank only strengthened Zina's resolve. Momaya's sunken expression and Kofi's pleas echoed in her mind as she hurried back to the village. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice for a family that had already endured too much. Zina visited an old friend, Kwabina, the village lawyer. Though his office was a small, humble space lined with dusty books and faded certificates, Kwabina was known for his sharp mind and unshakable integrity. When Zina explained the situation, Kwabina's brows knitted in concern. "If what you're saying is true, Zina, this is a serious crime. But proving it won't be easy. Bank managers like Mr. Okai often cover their tracks well. Zina nodded, her expression determined. I'm not giving up, Kobina. Kofi's ghost is guiding me, and I believe we can uncover the truth. Kobina's skepticism faded, replaced by a quiet admiration for her determination. All right, he said, pulling out a notepad. Tell me everything you know so far. Uncovering the evidence. Over the next few days, Zina worked tirelessly, guided by Kofi's spirit. He led her to people who had also been swindled by Mr. Okai. One was an elderly man named Ibo, who had lost his life savings after being told his account was ineligible for withdrawal. Another was a widow, Akua, whose late husband's pension had mysteriously vanished after his death. Zina collected their testimonies, recording their stories and gathering evidence of Mr. Okai's fraudulent activities. With Kobina's help, she tracked down bank transaction records that revealed large, unexplained transfers to Mr. Okai's personal account. Late one evening, as Zina pored over the documents in Kobina's office, she felt a sudden chill. The air grew heavy, and a faint voice whispered her name. Zina. She turned, startled, and saw the ghostly figure of a young woman. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, and her presence radiated a deep sadness. Who are you? Zina asked softly. The ghost hesitated before speaking. My name is Efai. I was once a clerk at the bank. I discovered Mr. Okai's thefts, but when I tried to expose him, he silenced me, forever. Zina's heart sank. You mean he killed you? Efai nodded, tears streaming down her translucent cheeks. He lured me to his office late one night, pretending to seek my help. When I confronted him with the evidence, he strangled me and buried my body in the forest. No one ever found me. My family still searches for answers. Zina clenched her fist, anger rising within her. Efai, your story won't be in vain. We'll expose him for what he's done, not just to Momaya but to everyone he's wronged, including you. Efai's expression softened, and she pointed to a specific line in the records Zina was holding. This transfer, it's the key. It connects all his crimes. Use it to bring him down. The confrontation. Armed with the evidence and the testimonies of Mr. Okai's victims, Zina and Kobina marched into the bank the next morning. Mama Ya accompanied them, holding her head high despite her lingering fear. The receptionist tried to turn them away, but Kobina's authoritative tone and mention of a potential police investigation quickly earned them entry to Mr. Okai's office. The manager greeted them with feigned politeness. Oh, Zina and guests. To what do I owe the pleasure? Zina stepped forward, placing a thick folder of documents on his desk. We're here to give you one last chance, Mr. Okai. We know about the stolen funds, the false account closures, and the fraudulent transfers to your personal account. Mr. Okai's smile faltered, but he quickly regained his composure. These are baseless accusations. Do you have any proof? Kobina opened the folder, revealing copies of bank records, witness statements, and other damning evidence. This is more than enough to implicate you, Mr. Okai. If you don't return the stolen money to its rightful owners, we'll take this to the police, the bank's board of directors, and the media. Mr. Okai's face darkened, but he remained silent. Before Zina could continue, the room grew cold, and a gust of wind blew through, scattering papers across the desk. Efai's ghost appeared behind Mr. Okai, her once sorrowful expression now fierce. You will not escape justice this time, she said, her voice echoing. Though Mr. Okai couldn't see her, the sudden chill made him uneasy. He shifted nervously in his seat, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Zina leaned in, her voice low and firm. I know about Efai. She told me everything. Do you really want to add murder to the list of charges? Panic flashed in Mr. Okai's eyes. He knew he was cornered. Finally, he slumped in his chair and muttered, "What do you want?" Kwabena spoke calmly but firmly. "Return every stolen penny to Mama Ya and all your other victims. Resign from your position and confess your crimes to the authorities. If you do that, we might consider leniency." Mr. Okai's shoulders sagged in defeat. "Fine. I'll do it." Zina crossed her arms, her expression unwavering. "We'll be watching to make sure you do." As they left the office, Zina felt a wave of relief. AFI's ghost appeared one last time, her expression peaceful. "Thank you, Zina. My family will finally know the truth." With AFI's spirit at rest and Mr. Okai's crimes exposed, Zina knew their battle was far from over, but it was a victory worth celebrating. Justice for the forgotten. The air was heavy with anticipation as Zina, Mama Ya, and Kwabena entered the town's police station. Kwabena carried a leather-bound file containing all the evidence they had gathered against Mr. Okai. Zina walked beside him, her resolve unshaken, while Mama Ya followed quietly, still processing the whirlwind of events. Inside the station, an officer greeted them skeptically. "How can I help you?" Kwabena stepped forward, his voice steady. "We are here to report a case of fraud, theft, and possibly murder, committed by Mr. Okai, the bank manager." The officer raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Do you have proof?" Zina spoke up, her voice calm but firm. "We have documents, witness statements, and financial records that directly implicate him. You'll want to see this." Kwabena placed the file on the desk. The officer opened it, his expression shifting from indifference to shock as he skimmed through the contents. After a moment, he looked up, his demeanor now serious. "This is significant. We'll need to bring him in for questioning immediately," he said, calling over two other officers to assist. The arrest of Mr. Okai. By the afternoon, Mr. Okai's once comfortable life was upended. The police stormed into the bank, arresting him in front of his staff and clients. His attempts to maintain composure crumbled as the officers placed him in handcuffs. "You can't do this," he shouted. "This is a mistake." But his cries fell on deaf ears as he was led out of the building. News of his arrest spread quickly through the village, and whispers of his crimes began to circulate. Restoring what was lost. A week later, Zina and Mama Ya were called to the bank. The new interim manager, appointed after Mr. Okai's arrest, met them in his office. "Mrs. Ya," he began, addressing her with a respect she hadn't been shown in years. "We've completed a full audit of the accounts, and I'm pleased to inform you that your son's savings have been restored. The funds are now available for your use." Mama Ya's eyes filled with tears as the manager handed her a bank card and a printed statement showing the balance. The amount was staggering, far more than she had dared to hope. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you so much." Zina placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You deserve this, Mama Ya. It's Kofi's legacy, and it's finally back where it belongs." With the money, Mama Ya was able to move her family into a proper home. The children, once frail and hungry, were enrolled in school, their laughter filling the air as they thrived in their new life. AFI's peace. That night, Zina returned to her small home, exhausted but content. As she prepared for bed, she felt a familiar chill in the air. Turning, she saw AFI's ghost standing by the window, her form glowing softly in the moonlight. "You did it, Zina," AFI said, her voice filled with gratitude. Zina smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "We did it, AFI. Your story is out in the open, and justice has been served." AFI nodded, her expression serene. "Because of you, my family will finally know the truth. I can rest now, knowing that others won't suffer as I did." As the ghost began to fade, AFI's final words lingered in the room. "Thank you, Zina. You are a beacon of hope for the forgotten. Zina sat on her bed, staring out into the night. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her actions had not only changed lives but also honored the memories of those who had been wronged. For Mama Ya, for Kofi, and for AFI, justice had prevailed. And for Zina, the journey was a reminder that courage and compassion could triumph over even the darkest of evils. A wedding and a warning. The village buzzed with excitement when Amora, Zina's childhood friend, shared the news of her engagement. Amora had always been a spirited and independent woman, and now she was set to marry Kwame, a wealthy businessman who had recently settled in their town. "He's perfect, Zina," Amora gushed one afternoon as they sat under a mango tree. "Kwame is kind, generous, and absolutely devoted to me. He treats me like a queen." Zina smiled politely, but something about Kwame's sudden appearance and whirlwind romance with Amora unsettled her. "How did you meet him?" Zina asked, trying to mask her unease. "At a community event," Amora explained. "He was hosting a charity dinner for orphan children. We started talking, and everything just fell into place. It's like fate brought us together." Zina nodded, but her instincts told her there was more to the story. "What do you know about his past?" "Not much," Amora admitted. "He was married before, but his wife passed away in an accident. He doesn't like to talk about it, it's too painful for him." Zina's heart sank. A vague, tragic story and a reluctance to discuss it, something about this didn't feel right. A night of unrest. That evening, as Zina prepared for bed, she couldn't shake her unease. The shadows in her room seemed to stretch farther than usual, and the silence felt oppressive. Just as she was about to drift off, a cold breeze swept through the room, making her shiver. She opened her eyes and saw a faint figure standing near her window. It was a woman, her face pale and her eyes filled with sorrow. Who are you?" Zina stammered, sitting up. The figure stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Ajoa. I was Kwame's wife." Zina's breath caught in her throat. "His first wife. But you died in an accident." Ajoa shook her head, her expression pained. "That's what he wanted everyone to believe. The truth is far darker. Kwame is not who he appears to be." Zina's skin prickled with fear, but she forced herself to listen. "What do you mean?" Ajoa hesitated, as if reliving a nightmare. "Kwame practices dark rituals to maintain his wealth and power. I discovered the truth after we were married. One night, I caught him performing a ritual in a secret room in our home. There were symbols on the walls, and he used living sacrifices." Zina's stomach churned. "What happened to you, Ajoa?" "When I confronted him, he begged me to stay silent, but I couldn't. I tried to leave, but he wouldn't let me. He killed me and staged the accident to hide his crime." Tears streamed down Ajoa's face as she stepped closer to Zina. "Amora is in danger. Kwame has chosen her as his next sacrifice. Please, you have to stop him before it's too late." The warning. Zina's heart raced as she took in Ajoa's words. "How can I stop him? What proof do I have?" Ajoa pointed toward the window. "There's a hidden room in Kwame's mansion. It's where he keeps all the tools and symbols for his rituals. You'll find the evidence you need there." Zina nodded, determination hardening her resolve. "I'll protect Amora. I promise." Ajoa's figure began to fade, her voice lingering in the room. "Thank you, Zina. You're her only hope." Zina's plan. The next morning, Zina met Amora at their favorite cafe. Amora was glowing with excitement, showing Zina the details of her wedding dress and talking about the guest list. "Amora," Zina said gently, interrupting her friend. "I need to talk to you about Kwame." Amora frowned. "What's wrong?" Zina hesitated, unsure how to explain. I don't think he's who you think he is. There are things about his past, things he hasn't told you. Amora's expression hardened. Zina, what are you talking about? You've never even met him. I know, Zina said, her voice trembling. But someone close to him told me he's dangerous. I think you should postpone the wedding until we know more. Amora shook her head, disbelief written all over her face. This is absurd. Kwame is the kindest man I've ever met. Why would you say something like this? Zina's heart ached at her friend's defensiveness. Please, Amora. Just let me prove it to you. If I'm wrong, I'll support you wholeheartedly. But if I'm right... Amora looked at her friend, conflicted. Fine, she said finally. But you'd better have something concrete, Zina. I won't let you ruin my happiness over baseless fears. As Amora walked away, Zina knew time was running out. She had to act quickly to uncover the truth about Kwame and save her friend from a fate worse than death, the final confrontation. Zina worked tirelessly over the next few days, determined to expose Kwame for the monster he was. Guided by Ajua's ghost, she pieced together a plan to uncover the truth. The two revisited every detail of Kwame's life, identifying patterns that led to suspicious disappearances and unexplained deaths connected to him. Zina, Ajua said one evening, her voice steady, the key to proving his guilt lies in his mansion. The secret room holds all the evidence you need, but you must act quickly. The wedding is in 2 days, and he's already preparing for the ritual. Zina nodded. I'll find it, Ajua. I won't let him harm Amora or anyone else. The mansion investigation. With great difficulty, Zina convinced Amora to accompany her to Kwame's mansion while he was away on business. Although still skeptical, Amora reluctantly agreed, saying, I'll come, but only because I trust you, Zina. If you're wrong, though, this friendship will never be the same. That evening, they arrived at the sprawling estate. The mansion loomed ominously under the moonlight, its grandeur masking the darkness within. Ajoa's ghost guided Zina through the halls, whispering instructions as they moved cautiously. It's behind the library, Ajoa said. There's a hidden door disguised as part of the bookshelf. Zina and Amora entered the library, their flashlights casting eerie shadows. Following Ajoa's guidance, Zina found a latch embedded in the woodwork. She pulled it, and a section of the bookshelf slid open, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. Amora gasped. This can't be real. It's real, Zina said grimly. Come on. The secret room. They descended into the secret room, and what they found left them both shaken. The walls were covered in symbols painted in dark red, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of blood. In the center of the room stood an altar adorned with ritualistic objects, a dagger, bowls of dried herbs, and faded photographs of past victims. Amora stumbled back, her face pale. This is monstrous. Zina, you were right. Zina examined the altar and found a journal filled with detailed accounts of Kwame's rituals. This is what we need, she said, holding it up. With this, we can expose him. The arrest. Zina and Amora immediately took the evidence to the authorities. With the journal, photographs, and testimonies from Ajoa's ghost, they presented an airtight case. The police acted swiftly, surrounding Kwame's mansion and arresting him as he returned home that night. Kwame tried to maintain his charm, denying the accusations. This is ridiculous, he scoffed. You have no proof. But when confronted with the journal and the secret room, his facade crumbled. The authorities also uncovered connections to a network of individuals involved in similar dark practices, leading to the dismantling of the cult he belonged to. Peace for the victims. As Kwame was led away in handcuffs, Zina felt a sudden lightness in the air. The ghosts of his victims appeared around her, their once tormented expressions now serene. Ajoa stood at the forefront, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You've done what I couldn't, Zina," Ajoa said softly. "Because of you, we can finally rest." The spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. Zina watched them go, her heart heavy yet filled with relief. A new chapter. In the days that followed, Amora publicly thanked Zina for saving her life, and the community rallied around her, hailing her as a hero. Momaya, whose life had also been transformed by Zina's courage, organized a small celebration in her honor. Standing before the gathered crowd, Zina spoke from the heart. "Evil thrives when we choose to look away, when we silence our instincts and ignore the cries of those who can no longer speak for themselves. Compassion and courage are our greatest weapons against darkness. Let us never forget that." As the applause rang out, Zina felt a renewed sense of purpose. She knew her journey wasn't over, there would always be more battles to fight, more lives to save. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of peace, knowing she had made a difference. The story ends with Zina walking under the starlit sky, her spirit unbroken, her heart unwavering, and her resolve stronger than ever.